Witaj, nazywam się Paweł Byczuk i zapraszam do drugiej części rozmowy z Bruce'em Moenem. Jak wspominałem poprzednio, nie udało nam się nawiązać stabilnego połączenia wideo na Skype, w związku z tym rozmowa będzie ilustrowana obrazkiem, zdjęciem z tej rozmowy. Natomiast to, co jest najistotniejsze, czyli treść rozmowy, nagrała się znakomicie. Pierwszą część naszej rozmowy skupiliśmy na emocjach, na pytaniach dotyczących emocji, na ich roli, na tym, w jaki sposób można emocje wykorzystać do badania światów niefizycznych, jak mogą nam przeszkadzać oraz w jaki sposób sobie z tym poradzić. Druga część naszej rozmowy to pytania od czytelników, które skupiły się wokół pewnego tematu, który jest bezpośrednio związany z emocjami i rozszerza nasze rozumienie podróży do światów niefizycznych. Tę część rozmowy zacząłem od przedstawienia problemu, jaki ma jedna z naszych czytelniczek. Otóż we wczesnym dzieciństwie posiadała zdolność do świadomego śnienia oraz swobodnego unoszenia się i przemieszczania po pokoju, podczas kiedy jej ciało leżało lub spało. Mogła na życzenie opuszczać ciało i wracać do niego. Pamięta to dobrze, ponieważ było to fascynujące przeżycie. Natomiast teraz, po latach, ma wrażenie, jakby była za szybą. Nie ma dostępu do tego typu doświadczeń, do światów niefizycznych. W związku z tym pytanie, które się pojawiło, które zadała, było następujące. Bruce, czy znasz przyczynę takiego stanu rzeczy i czy jest możliwe odzyskanie tych umiejętności z dzieciństwa?
This particular situation is also quite common. It's common for children to have such experiences, lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences. It's also quite common that typically around the age of 6 or 7 years, those experiences begin to fade and become fewer. Most often, what I find is that the reason those experiences have stopped has to do with beliefs the person has taken on. For example, a child may go to their mother in the morning and say, "Mom, I had a dream last night where I was out of my body and I flew to this place and I saw my grandfather. And we had a long conversation. It was wonderful to see grandfather again. He died so many years ago. It was wonderful to see him." And the mother might say, "Well, that was not really your grandfather. That couldn't be your grandfather. Your grandfather's dead. What you're experiencing is not real." If the child then takes on the mother's belief that these experiences are not real, taking on that belief will tend to make those experiences more difficult, because as the experience begins, the child may say to themselves, "Well, Mom said that this is not real, that this is just my imagination or just a dream. And so what I'm doing, it is not real." And over a period of time, as a child takes on more and more beliefs given to them by their parents, their friends, their church, their school, other places, that tell them what they're doing is not real, very often that's what causes people to lose that ability. As far as how to correct that or how to do that again, there are some things that we can do in the first workshop. Primarily, what we need to do is have an experience in this non-physical world that we can verify is real. For example, maybe as an adult, this woman comes to the workshop, and in one of her exercises, she imagines or pretends that she's visiting with her grandfather once again. And during this visit with her grandfather, perhaps she says to her grandfather, "Grandfather, could you please show me, tell me, or give me something that can prove to me that this conversation we're having is real. This happened for a man in Germany who came to the workshop when he encountered his grandfather. His own father was in the process of dying, and he was visiting with the grandfather. And the grandfather said, well, yes, I can give you something that you can use to prove that this experience is real. He said, go to your father and ask him about, I don't know, Frau Oblish, or whatever the woman's name was. Ask him about Frau Oblish. When he lived, when you and the family lived in the house on Bergenstrasse, Frau Oblish lived in the house two houses down. Your father spent a lot of time visiting Frau Oblish. You asked him what he was doing while he was visiting her. And so this man, later, when he was in a conversation in the physical world with his father, said, Father, do you remember Frau Oblish, who lived two houses down from us when we lived on Bergenstrasse? And the father said, well, yes. And he said, Father, you spent a lot of time down there visiting with her. What were you doing? The look on his father's face was like, oh my God, I've been caught. Who told you this? Where did you find out about this? And he said, well, I visited with my grandfather, your father, and he told me that you were spending time at Frau Oblish's house because you were having an affair with her. And you were going down to her house having a sexual affair with her. And the father said, who told you this? I've never told anyone about this. How do you know? And he said, well, I spoke to your father, and he told me. He said, well, that's not possible. He's dead. That can't be. Well, the information that he got from the grandfather turned out to be verified as real. The one thing that can help to get those experiences back this lady is talking about is to begin to undo the effects of all those beliefs that say it's not real by having experiences that she can prove herself are real and verify. And so my advice would be in terms of the workshop, whenever we go to explore in a non-physical reality, doing retrievals, which some people understand what I mean when I say that, you can ask the person, show me, tell me, or give me something that will prove to me that this experience is real. And each time they get some information that it's real, it begins to remove the effects of those beliefs. And there are people who have attended the workshop who have recovered those abilities.
Temat przekonań szeroko omawiasz na warsztatach, bo jest to czynnik, który obok emocji, a szczególnie strachu, jest największym hamulcem w naszym rozwoju. Temat ten na pewno będzie jeszcze powracał w naszej rozmowie, bo niemal na każdym kroku przekonania nam towarzyszą. Nie inaczej będzie pewnie i teraz, bo jeden z naszych czytelników napisał, że nie może utrzymać pełnej świadomości podczas relaksacji na tyle długo, żeby doświadczyć OBE. Po prostu zasypia. W związku z tym chciałby poznać sposób na pokonanie tej trudności, aby móc uświadomić sobie moment uśpienia ciała, a jednocześnie zachować pełną świadomość. Co zrobić w tym przypadku?
Well, as I mentioned before, I attempted to learn to do out-of-body experience, as this fellow is, over a long period of years. And I've been consciously out of body maybe 5 times in my life. And at least 3 of those times, what would happen is I would say to myself, oh, I'm out of my body, and then bang, I'm back in. It would last just seconds. So I'm not a good one to teach about out-of-body experience, but I am a good one to teach about relaxation. Part of the difficulty with out-of-body experience is that it occurs most easily in the area of consciousness that Bob Monroe called Focus 10, mind awake, body asleep. The transition between being physically awake and non-physically awake is so subtle that it's very difficult to feel when that transition happens. An example from my own experience. I'm the kind of person who falls asleep easily. When I lay down to go to sleep, if I'm awake 90 seconds later, for me that's insomnia. So in one of my, some time ago, as I lay down to go to sleep, I'm laying there wide awake, wondering why I'm not asleep yet. And it seems like maybe 5 minutes has gone by, and I'm still thinking, well, this is crazy. I should be asleep by now. I don't understand why I can't fall asleep. And then I suddenly felt my wife nudge me with her elbow, and she said, "Bruce, you're snoring." I had absolutely no awareness of snoring. I thought I was completely awake because I couldn't detect the difference at the point in which that shift is made. And so for those of you who are interested in out-of-body experience, which to me is an exotic technique that to explore non-physical worlds is not required, but here's what I would suggest. Let go of the idea of actually finding the moment in which you go out of body. Or another way to say that is, let go of the idea that you must determine the point at which you are going out of your body, that you're non-physically awake. Just assume that as you lay down and relax, at some point, as you begin to drift to sleep, before you actually lose consciousness, there will be a time in which you are physically asleep and non-physically awake. And I would suggest that you sort of test this. For example, when you lay down to go to sleep at night, every minute or so, pretend that you've gotten up out of your bed and you're standing in your kitchen and you're looking at the kitchen stove. Or imagine that you've gotten up and you've walked outside. Just pretend that you've walked outside. If you are still physically awake, you won't have much awareness of being outside or in the kitchen. But if you are non-physically awake, in a state in which you can do an out-of-body experience, as you begin to imagine yourself standing in your kitchen, you will be standing in your kitchen. You will have gone out of body and be standing in your kitchen, and will be observing from that position. Or if you imagine stepping outside your home, you will find yourself there. One of the great difficulties of out-of-body experiences is somewhat similar to lucid dreaming in terms of trying to explore beyond physical reality. First, you must lose physical world consciousness before you can lucid dream. Or you must lose physical world consciousness before you can go out of body. But by definition, losing physical world consciousness for most of us means falling asleep, and so this man has that problem. He relaxes and he falls asleep. And the technique that I teach in the workshop, all the exercises are done sitting in a chair. You're awake, your eyes are closed, you're relaxed. The chance of falling asleep is very, very small because your body knows if you fall asleep, you may fall out of the chair and hurt yourself, so your body won't let you fall asleep.
To bardzo szczegółowe wyjaśnienie i cenna rada.
Maybe too long, but...
Myślę, że nie, że dokładnego wyjaśnienia wymagało to, skąd się to bierze i jak sobie poradzić. Ale zostawmy obę na boku, bo jak powiedziałeś, nie jest to obszar Twojej działalności i skupmy się na kolejnej rzeczy, która dotyczy właściwie przedmiotu warsztatów. A pytanie jest takie, jak zacząć badać świat niefizyczny, nie mając żadnych doświadczeń poza ciałem, świadomych snów, czy też innych tego typu doznań?
Well, that's a very good question because when I first developed this workshop, my goal was to develop a way for people to learn to explore these non-physical worlds through their own direct experience so they could come to their own conclusions and gather their own information. And I wanted to be able to do that without the necessity of OBE or lucid dreams or any other, I guess I would call them props or complicated methods. Probably the most important concept that I use in teaching exploration of the non-physical world is the idea that we can use imagination as a means of perceiving. That it's by using our imagination that we can begin to explore. Now, some people will immediately think, oh, he means we're just going to have a fantasy and pretend that we're exploring, and somehow that's going to be real. And most people will just reject that immediately. Well, that can't be possible. The word imagination is different than the word fantasy in English. In English, fantasy is something that's completely fabricated. It's completely made up, and it's not real. And so if we use our fantasy to try to explore something, by definition, nothing we're exploring is real because we're creating it all in our own mind. Using imagination is different. Imagination can be used as a sense or a way of perceiving non-physical realities. For example, all of us are familiar with the fact that we have a physical sense of sight. And we use this physical sense of sight in the physical world to see physical things. One of the other concepts that fits with imagination is the concept that we have a non-physical sense of sight. And that non-physical sense of sight is able to perceive things within non-physical reality. And when we use that non-physical sense of sight, that's part of using imagination as a means of perceiving. We also have a non-physical sense of hearing, of taste, touch, and smell. There are exercises in the workshop to develop these non-physical senses. The actual process, again, doesn't involve OBE or lucid dreams or any of those sorts of things. In the actual process, we begin by saying to ourselves, it's okay if we pretend, as the beginning of an exploration, as a way of sort of getting the process started. So for example, let's say that I wanted to visit my grandfather. I might begin by pretending that I'm visiting my grandfather, or pretending that I'm at his house, pretending that he's sitting in an overstuffed chair in his living room, and pretending that I'm sitting in a rocking chair in his living room, and pretending that we're having a conversation. I might begin by actively pretending. And I might actively pretend that I say something like, well, Grandpa, I'm so glad to see you. You're looking good. I might then also actively pretend what my grandfather says in response. Yeah, Bruce, I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty healthy, pretty spry. Got out and did some fishing last week. I continue to pretend a conversation. As I do that, at some point, something unexpected may happen. And this is the real key to using imagination as a means of exploring these non-physical worlds. Something unexpected happens. For example, maybe as I'm talking with my grandfather, a very large orange cat walks into the room. Now, I didn't actively pretend that. It just unexpectedly happened. When something unexpected happens in an experience using imagination as a means of perceiving and exploring non-physical realities, what I teach is play along with this unexpected event just to see where it takes your experience. There's no need to judge it. There's no need to decide whether it's real or not, whether you're making it up or not. Just play along. And so in this case, I might turn to my grandfather and say, Grandpa, I don't remember you having a cat like that. That's a very big orange cat. My grandfather might say, well, yeah, he just showed up in the neighborhood and I started feeding him and now he lives at my house. It may be that later when I talk to my grandmother about my grandfather before he died, I might ask her, Grandma, do you remember a big orange cat? And she might say, in our physical world conversation, why, yes, I do. You know, it wasn't too many weeks before your grandfather died that this big orange cat showed up in the neighborhood, and he started feeding it, and the cat was then living in our house. What's happened is I started by completely pretending and fabricating that I'm visiting my grandfather, pretending the conversation, but something unexpected happened, the orange cat. I played along to ask my grandfather about the cat, got some information that I could then later ask someone about, like his wife, my grandmother. And if she verifies, as she did in this example, if she verifies that there was a big orange cat and all the rest of the details, then I know that what started as a pretended, fabricated fantasy somehow shifted toward an unexpected event that led to verifiably real information. That's the basic process. And in my experience, we all carry numbers of beliefs and ideas that will conflict with our ability to do this kind of exploration. And the one thing that eliminates that, the one thing that helps us develop these non-physical senses and helps us to have these kinds of experiences with greater frequency and much more easily, and information coming more easily, is to use something I teach in the workshop called the basic premise. If you can find a way to make contact and communicate with a person who's known to be deceased, in this case, I started a fantasy conversation. If I can get some information from this person I have no other way of knowing, except by the conversation after they died. In this case, I've asked him about this unexpected orange cat that walked into the room. If I can find a way later to verify that the information I receive as a result of an unexpected event is real, I have proven to myself that at least that part of my experience is real. Something happens after that that is the closest thing to magic that I know. Because just doing that, just finding a way to communicate, even if you're pretending, gathering information, verifying that it's real, has a way of eliminating the blockages that we have in our perception that prevent us from doing these things. It just seems to be automatic. The verification step is very important.
Na tym się kończy druga część rozmowy z Bruce'em Moenem, która dotyczyła niezwykle istotnego aspektu naszych przekonań w badaniu światów niefizycznych. Temat jest bardzo rozległy i nie sposób poruszyć wszystkich jego aspektów w ciągu tak krótkiej rozmowy, zwłaszcza, że Bruce poświęca na niego na warsztatach dużo czasu, ponieważ jest to fundament podróży do światów niefizycznych. Następna część naszej rozmowy ukaże się niebawem, a tymczasem, jeśli do tej pory jeszcze nie zapisałaś się lub nie zapisałeś się na warsztaty Bruce'a Moena, podróży do światów niefizycznych, jeśli chcesz poznać ten temat głębiej, nauczyć się podróżować do światów niefizycznych i wykorzystywać tę metodę w swoim codziennym życiu, to tu poniżej filmu znajduje się klawisz, który przeniesie Cię do zapisu na warsztaty. Wybierz najlepszą opcję dla siebie i weź udział w warsztatach, które odbędą się w maju. Czas rejestracji dobiega końca, więc już najwyższa pora, żeby tego dokonać. Tymczasem żegnam się i do usłyszenia, mówił Paweł Byczuk.